In this video, I'm going to be setting up DigitalOcean Spaces. So that's a form of static file storage for your website. So as you know, if you've been following with this course, we built this website using Django and Python, and we hosted it using DigitalOcean. Now we need a place to store the static files for the server. So if a user posts a blog post, for example, where does the thumbnail get stored? Where does any media get stored? That's what we need DigitalOcean Spaces for. And just in case you were wondering, DigitalOcean Spaces actually uses Amazon Web Services behind the scenes, but it's a little easier to set up when you just use DigitalOcean, and it keeps everything localized to your project. You know, you have your server host is DigitalOcean, and also the static file storage will be on DigitalOcean, where you can see the size and how often they're being used, how much money it's costing. All that kind of stuff will be in one place, which is a much nicer way to do things, I think. So basically, I'm going to be following this document in the DigitalOcean documentation. If you want the link, here it is up here, or you can just search the title, how to set up object storage with Django in the DigitalOcean documentation. You'll end up here. Basically, I'm just going to be following along with this document. It's going to be a long video. I'm going to put timestamps in the description so that if you get to a step and you want to come back later, or you get stuck, or you need a review, the timestamps will be really handy for that. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. I'm going to show you everything you need to do. We already have a website up and running, so everything's going to be kind of production ready by the end of this video, and you should have static files ready to go on your server. So the first step in this process is actually getting an API key for the space to use Spaces with your project. And if you're following along with the documentation, after you do all the install stuff, the dependencies, blah 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 blah, getting a project all set up, that's where you'll end up. So that is what we are going to do right now. So first I'm going to go over to create here, and I'm going to create a DigitalOcean space. Hopefully I didn't already. I think I deleted it because I've obviously done this ahead of time. So I just wanted to make sure that I did delete the old one. So choose a data center. I always choose New York. I always choose New York because I find it's more central. You know, it's to the end of North America, but it's still close to Africa and Europe. So I don't know if it makes a difference. They might do automatic load balancing anyway. But anyway, I choose New York. If you are using a production website, you might want to consider using a content delivery network. I haven't made a video on that. I don't plan to make a video on that. If you want to learn how to do that, you can just search the Django documentation for how to set up a content delivery network. But as of right now, I have no plans to make one. The next option is allow file listing. So I want to restrict it. I only want me to be able to look at the files. I don't want anybody to be able to look at the files. And next is choosing a name. So this is just going to be, I guess I'll do open API space, open API spaces or space, whatever. Oh, it looks like that. I thought I created one. I guess I didn't delete it, but anyway, we'll call it open API spaces then, and choose a project, the Coding with Mitch blog course, and I'm going to create that space. Okay, so now our space is set up, or it's created anyway. So there's a place for files to exist. I can upload files. I can create a new folder. I'm actually going to create a new folder before we move on to the next step. So it's going to be open API static files. It's going to be the name of that folder, and that's where all of our files are going to get uploaded to. So it's empty for now, but by the end of this video, we're going to have some stuff being put in there from our server. So next is creating an API key. So I'm going to go into, that's where the spaces setting, that's where the spaces navigation was. So if I click here, I probably will see my old one. Yeah, so there's the open API space that I created before with the old static files. So I'm actually going to delete this old space. Get out of here, destroy, enter the name, okay. So if you want to delete one, that's how you do it. So now that I have that old one deleted from when I was testing, here's our new one that we're going to be using for our server. So now the next step, as I was saying, is we need an API key to access this from our application, or from our server. So I'm going into the API section here, and I want to scroll down, and there's the API key that I created for the previous one. I'm actually going to delete this, get rid of that. You won't have anything there right now. It's going to look like this. I want to generate a new key, and I want to give this key a name. So this is just going to be my open API spaces key. Call it whatever you want. The name is not important. I'm going to click the check mark, and it's going to generate a key. Just keep in mind, I am going to be deleting these after, so if you copy them and you try and use them, it's not going to work. You'd be surprised by how many people do things that I tell them not to, so I'm just going to tell you anyway. And okay, so let's move on here. The next step, this is very important. You need to copy this secret key and put it somewhere locally on your computer. You don't have to save it; just kind of save it in a notepad file for now. So I'm not actually saving it. I just have it pasted in here and save the key. So you want the secret and you want the API key. The API key is going to be available, but this is going to disappear as soon as I leave the page. And I don't know if there's a way to see it again after. So there probably is, but just to be safe, copy it and put it in the notepad file. Because if I was to refresh this page, I think it disappears. So I've refreshed the page and I scroll down and yeah, see now it's gone. I don't know if I don't see a way to like look at the key. So make sure that before you refreshed, you copy it. If you refreshed it already and it was too late, just delete this one, regenerate it, and copy the private key and copy the key here. All right, next we're going to move on to configuring our Django to work with spaces. So I'm logged in with the root user. You can log in with a user that has permission to edit your Django project, or you can use the root user. I generally just use the root user because I know it's going to have permission to do whatever I want. And I want to navigate into my Django project, and I can either activate a virtual environment and install the dependencies, or I can just install the dependencies right onto my server. I'm just going to install them right onto my server. So I'm going to do pip3 install boto3. This is something that you need. So I'm installing that. And next I need to install Django storages. So pip3 install Django-storages. Next, I want you to navigate into your Django project directory, and I want you to make sure that you have a static directory, but I want you to delete the static content delivery network directory because that was pretty much only for development. This folder should not exist in production because basically our spaces, our DigitalOcean spaces will take the place of this directory, and our static files are going to be served from there. They're not going to be served locally anymore. So I want to delete the static CDN folder. And if you have a media CDN folder, you'll also want to delete that one. Basically, you just want that one static directory. Once everything is deleted, the next step is we need to go into settings.py. So I'm opening with the default text editor for my development or my server environment. I want to scroll down and I need to add Django storages. So to the installed apps here, I need to go Django -storages, or maybe is it just storages or just Django storages? I think it's actually just storages. So just storages, all one word. And I want to save that. And now we need to scroll to the very bottom of this file, and we're going to add all of the static URL, the static root, all of the AWS and DigitalOcean spaces configuration stuff that we need to add to this file. And I've actually created a gist to save some time. So if you want to check out this gist, it'll save you a little bit of time rather than typing this out. So here's the URL. I'll actually put this in the description. It'll be at the very bottom of the description of this video because that's kind of long to type out. And so you can scroll down here, and you want to make sure that you have storages in the installed apps, and you want to make sure that your auth user model is set to the account. And then here is all of the configuration stuff that you need to copy. So I'm copying all that stuff, going back to the settings.py file, and I'm pasting over top of the static file stuff that I have in there currently. So some of this is going to need to change though. Obviously the AWS access key, that needs to get copied from our DigitalOcean spaces that we just did earlier. The secret access key was the longer one, so I'm copying that, going to paste that in there also. And also I want to mention right now that right now we're adding all these this sensitive information to the settings.py file, but later we're going to be using a Python library to encrypt this further so that it will be more secure basically. So just keep that in mind. We're going to hard code it in for now, but then later at the end of this video, we're going to encrypt this and do something called decouple. We're going to decouple the settings to another file. So the AWS storage bucket, that was open API spaces that we named it. The endpoint URL should be the same, but you can check that by going to DigitalOcean. So if we go to DigitalOcean, go to manage, go to your spaces, you'll be able to see where that is. So nyc3 digitaloceanspaces.com. That's mine. So that's the correct one that I have here, nyc3 digitaloceanspaces.com. But you want to copy whatever you have in there. The AWS S3 object is fine. You want to leave that the way it is. And then the AWS location is the folder that you created. So remember, inside of my spaces, I created this folder named Open API Static. That is what I have right, where is it? Open API Static right there. Static files directories just references the static directory. The static URL should look exactly like I have, and the static file storage and default file storage location, those should also be exactly the same as what I have. So remember to save the file by clicking the save button up here or pressing Control S. Make sure to save those changes. Now we're going to go back to our server and we need to finish this setup. So I'm going to do a collect static. So I want to CD into home Mitch Django project directory. So if I press ls, I now have access to the manage.py file. So I'm going to write Python manage.py collect static. And before I click enter, I just want to point something out to you. So remember, inside of our static API directory here inside spaces, there's nothing in here. So what we expect to happen after I click collect static is I expect all the static files for my Django server to be pushed to there. And actually, if I was to refresh my server and go to the admin, there shouldn't be any styling because I deleted that static CDN folder on my server. So there's no admin styling currently right now. But as soon as I do collect static, it will be available through our content delivery network, which is on our Django spaces. So let's go here. I'm going to do Python manage.py collect static. Looks like it's telling me that I forgot to activate my virtual environment. Couldn't import Django. So that's because some of my dependencies were installed in the virtual environment. So instead of activating the virtual environment, I'm just going to install all of the dependencies onto my server. So to do that, I want to do pip3 freeze r requirements.txt, or no, it's pip install -r requirements.txt. That's going to install everything inside the requirements file onto my server. Looks like everything is satisfied, but it's saying that Django wasn't activated, so I'm not sure what that was about. So maybe I do need to activate the virtual environment. ls, yeah, so source Django project environment bin and activate. So there we go, the virtual environment is activated. Now if I do Python manage.py collect static, that should work. Looks like no module named storages. So now we need to do pip3 install boto3 into the virtual environment. I should have done this at the start. I thought I could just install on the server, but I guess not. And then pip3 install Django storages. So that should be good. Now I will do collect static and it should be good. So I'm doing yes to overwrite any of the static files. And it says 120 static files have been copied. So now if I go back to DigitalOcean and I refresh my spaces, I should see the admin CSS files, the admin JavaScript, all that stuff, and also the Coding with Mitch logo, which I do. So now if I was to refresh the admin for the server, it's not working yet because it doesn't know where to recover the static files from, but it has uploaded them to the server. So there's still a few more steps that we need to do. There's only one step. We need to change the static file location in the Nginx configuration file. So I need to do nano. I should do sudo nano etc. You should remember where this is, by the way. We've looked at it quite a few times. So it's sites available, and the file is Django project. So if you're watching this video and you didn't follow my course, this file could have a different name, in which case actually I'll do it the long way. So what I want you to do then is do cd etc nginx sites available. And so cd into that directory, press ls, and look and see what that directory name is. Not the default configuration, you want the other configuration file, and then you want to edit that one. So sudo nano Django project, and what we need to do is change the location of the static directory. So change the location of this. So all I need to do is I'm coming down into the location that it has here, and I want to change the name root to alias. Once that's done, should be a space there. Once that's done, I'm pressing Control X, clicking Y for yes, then enter. And I need to restart Nginx or restart the server. I'm just going to restart the server. I can restart the server by going sudo shutdown -r now. And that's going to boot me out of the server. So you can see the session is stopped and I can close this. And in about 20 seconds, I can reconnect. So I'm just going to fast forward the video to 20 seconds later when I can reconnect. Okay, it's been about 20 seconds. I'm going to reconnect as the root user. It's going to authenticate using my SSH key that I have on my computer. And there we go, I'm back onto the server. So now if I go back to our website and I refresh the admin, it should be serving the static files from DigitalOcean Spaces, and it is. So now we have all the correct styling, and we should have access to DigitalOcean Spaces on the web server now. So I haven't even created a super user yet, so I can't even make any blog posts. So I'm going to create a super user. So I'm going to cd into home Mitch Django project directory. I'm going to do Python manage.py create super user. If you've already created a super user, I need to activate the virtual environment. Source Django, whoops, am I in the right directory? Should be Django project environment bin activate. And then I want to create that super user. So the email is going to be mitch@tabian.ca. Username is Mitch. My password and my password. So there's the super user has been created. Now I should be able to log in, or you can just register depending on what you're doing. So mitch@tabian.ca, logging in with my super user. So this is an error that I actually got when I was testing, but I'm going to do a little bit of research and figure out exactly why this is happening, and then I'm going to come back. All right, just did some research and I figured out what's wrong. So the problem is actually with the directory that the SQLite database exists in and the SQLite database itself. So you need to give permission to the directory that the SQLite database is in, plus the SQLite database itself to the user that you created earlier in this course that we've been following. So Mitch is the user that I created because that's where the Django project exists. It exists inside home and exists inside of the Mitch folder, who is a user. So I need to give permission to the Django project directory and also the SQLite database. So what I'm going to do is come over into my console here, and I'm inside of the home Mitch directory. I want to write chown Mitch Django project directory. So I'm giving Mitch permission to read and write to the Django project directory. So I click that, and after that you can type ls/l to view who has permission. If you see the user right there, then you know that he has permission to access that directory or read and write to that directory. Then I want to cd into that directory. If I press ls, so I'd be inside this directory here. I now have access to the SQLite database. I want to do chown Mitch and then reference the SQLite database. So db.sqlite3. So I'm giving Mitch permission to read and write to the SQLite database. I can double check that by going ls-l, and you can see right here that Mitch has permission to read and write to the database. So there's no need to restart the server at this point. I should be able to just go to our application. You can either log into the admin or try to just log into the server itself. So I'm refreshing this page. I'm going to try and log in with that super user that I created earlier. And there we go. You can see that I am now authenticated. So that's the problem. I'm glad I ran into it on video because now you will know how to solve it. So now that I'm logged in with a user to the server, I'm going to click on create post to create a blog post. So I'll just say this is, or I'll say congratulations because you've come so far. Congratulations, you made it this far. You now have a blog live and hosted on the internet. So let's choose an image. I'm just going to choose the DigitalOcean thumbnail that I created. If I click post, that looks successful. That's what our blog is supposed to do. Now if I go back to the home screen, there's that blog post. Congratulations. There's that DigitalOcean thumbnail, and I can see it live on the server. Now I want to check our DigitalOcean spaces. So if I refresh this, I should see a new folder that's been generated because there's been a new file inserted. So there's a new folder, blog, and then inside blog, there's the ID of the user who posted that blog, which is number 1, the first user, and then there is the name of the file, and there's the file right there. So at this point, everything should be working as expected in terms of uploading stuff to the server. Now, a good thing to test would be to create another new user and try to post something new. So I'm going to register a new user. I'll just do like test@gmail.com. Just do like test. Password is whatever. Log in with that user. So there we go. I don't need to save that. I'm going to try and create another new post. This is the second post. And I'll just do like a bunch of whatever. It doesn't really matter what you type in there. Let's choose a thumbnail, choose a second one, post it. Let's go back to the home screen, and there's the second post. We have that first post that we made. We have the second one. Now let's go to the DigitalOcean spaces and see if something else has been added. So we're inside the static directory inside of blog because the blog was posted. There's the ID of the user that posted that blog, the fake user, and then there's that second post that we created. So everything is working as we expect in terms of uploading files, creating blog posts, all that stuff. We're basically ready to go. The only thing that I want to, actually there's a couple of things I want to do, but the only thing that I'm going to do remaining in this video is increase the security of the settings.py file as I talked about earlier. So we're going to do something known as decoupling. We're going to decouple this settings file to another file to add additional security. And they recommend doing this in the DigitalOcean documentation. They recommend doing this for pretty much any settings file where you have anything important like, you know, private keys, access keys, passwords, anything important that you have, you want to use this decoupling thing that I'm about to show you. Okay, so let's go to our server and we need to install something. So I'm going to go and install a Python library for decoupling the settings files. So make sure that you're logged in with the root user. Well, I got to fix my mic. It's kind of fallen down here. Okay, so make sure you're logged in with the root user, and then I want to do pip3 install Python-decouple. Looks like the requirement's already satisfied. Okay, fine. So now we need to create a settings file for this Python decouple that's going to refer to our actual other settings file. So I'm in the Django project directory. I'm going to create a new file, and this is going to be called settings.ini. And there's different ways to do this. You can look it up in the Python decouple documentation, but this is the way that I'm going to do it. There's kind of two different file types you could create. There's no real preference, I don't think, but this is the one that I've chosen. I just think it's easier. I've also created a gist for you so that you don't have to copy all of this out. So this gist will be at the very bottom. It'll be one of the, I think, probably because there's one other gist that we referenced. This will be the other one. It'll be in the description of the video. And this is what you want to copy for the .ini file. So I'm pasting that in. We're going to make some changes still. And this stuff is going to it's going to go into the settings.py file. So maybe I'll come back to that. Let's work. Actually, yeah, I might as well. Oh no, we got to come back to it because I got to move this stuff over. So the settings.ini file, let's work on that first. So we have this in here. These are all the settings that basically I want to hide from the settings.py file, or the ones that I want extra security added onto or decoupled from. So first is debug. So that's going to be the setting at the very top here for debug mode. So you can change that in there. The second is going to be the secret or the production secret key. So I'm copying that and I'm going to paste that in here. Notice there's no quotations. So none of these are surrounded by quotations. There's also no spaces at the other end of these equal signs. I'm not sure if that matters, but it might. So just have it exactly how I do. Next is going to be the AWS access key. So I'm going to go down to the bottom of the settings.py file. I'm copying the access key, pasting that in. Next is the private key for the access API key, copying that, pasting that in. I need the bucket name. It's open API spaces is the name. That should be the correct endpoint URL unless you have a different one. So make sure you just kind of check what your endpoint URL is. It's going to be that right there. And then we have the location. So open API static, that's going to be this parameter right here. So now that this is created, I'm going to press Control S to save this and go back to the gist, and I'm going to copy everything inside of here. So inside the settings.py section. So I'm going to go back to settings.py and I'm going to paste it below. So this import from decouple import config, I'm going to move that to the top of the file, put it right there. And then I'm scrolling back to the bottom and I need to make some changes. So the secret key is, what you need to do is call config and then reference the name of it. So that's the name of it right there, secret key. Debug mode, I'm going to move this to the top of the, actually I'll move these two to the top of the file, the secret key and debug mode, because that's where they actually exist in here. So pasting in debug, pasting in the secret key, and I'm going to comment out the old secret key and comment out debug. So there's the new secret key referring to our decoupled file, and there's the new debug mode constant that's referring to our decoupled file. So now I need to work on this stuff. So the ones that I want to comment out are AWS access key, the secret key, the storage bucket, the endpoint URL, the AWS. Actually, I'll just comment it all out because it looks like I've added it. So I'm commenting out everything up to static files directories because the rest, all this stuff is going to be referenced using our decoupled file. So I'm cutting that and I'm pasting it just above our static files directories. So all of these just called the config library, and then it references the key that we have in our decoupled file. So it's just referencing these values. That's all it's doing. So I'm pressing Control S to save that. I can delete this if I want. You might want to wait to see if everything is working before you do that. I know it's going to work, so I'm going to delete it, but I suggest you leave it to make sure. Now watch it not work. It's not going to work now just because I'm so confident. That's how everything goes with programming. Oh, and actually one more really important thing I almost forgot to mention. If you have any percentage signs, so if you have any of these, any percentage signs inside of your secret key, you need to replace it with a double percentage sign. So right now there isn't any in here, but just for example, say I had a percentage sign right here. If there was, I would need to put a second one. If you only have one, it's unable to read it for whatever reason. I'm not sure, but just know that if you have a percentage sign inside of the secret key, you need to replace it with a second one. So just kind of know that it won't work if you don't do that. And we're gonna actually change this to debug equal to false eventually, but I want to test it first, and we'll leave debug set equal to true just to test, and then after we'll change it. So service gunicorn restart to make these changes take effect. And we hope that now when I visit this website, nothing has changed. Everything should still work, and it looks like it does. So I'm able to log out. I'll click log in, try and log in with a user. That looks good. So everything's still working as we expect. So everything's good. So now I'm going to change debug equal to false, which is how you should pretty much always have it on your server. And also, if you ever change any settings, if you change any files on your server, always do service gunicorn restart to restart everything, and then those changes will have taken effect. So if I refresh that, our server should be good to go now. We're decoupled. We have our static files set up. We have HTTP set up. Everything is ready to go. The only actually thing that we need to do, or the only thing I have planned now, is to set up the password reset. So if I was to try and log in and reset my password, we don't have that set up for production yet. It's only set up for the development environment. So in the next video, I'm going to set up a production reset of password email so that you actually receive an email and with a link that will reset the password.